Hey there, how do you know which paint to choose? For example, if you have two tubes from different brands of raw sienna, which one do you choose? If you're like me, you just kind of randomly grab them and you hope for the best, right? But what I did today was I decided I'm going to lay out my paint side by side, the colors that I have from several brands, and I'm going to swatch those so I can actually see the difference in the color or no difference in the color. So as the case may be, most of the colors that I swatched today were neutrals, and there was some big differences in them, in a lot of them anyway. So if you are, experiencing the same thing as me, like having multiple brands of the same color, you might want to try this so that you can have it at hand so you can decide like, oh, I want that darker burnt sienna versus the lighter one, or the one that has more warmer undertones versus the cooler undertones, whatever it happens to be. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this, watching how I'm swatching out and comparing and contrasting the different brands of the same color. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to swatch and compare the paints on just book paper. This is not gessoed. So it's going to absorb into the paper differently than if I'd had a gesso or a watercolor paper. But I think it's fun to use old book paper. And then I have a little place where I'm going to, when I have some left on my palette knife, I'm just going to clean my brush off on this, because then I'll use those papers for something else. So let's get started. As I said in the intro, I'm just going to be comparing two colors, mostly neutrals, in the Golden and the Liquitex Heavy Body, because I was trying to decide between the two, and I thought, it's been a long time since I've actually by side swatched out the different colors. So because each brand makes the color slightly different is what I found. So anyway, okay, we're just going to start, and I'm going to see which one I like better. I'm going to work straight. I'm not using a palette or anything. This is not formal. I'm just going to do a dab of each. We're going to start with the Payne's Gray. And then I want to just spread it around and see, like, what does it look like? Obviously, it can be this one can be very opaque, but then it can also be fairly transparent, as you can see, depending on the pressure, that you use and the amount that you use. So that was the Liquitex. And that's a nice shade of, dark blue. I know that the Golden is bluer, because that is something I do remember. So you can see the difference. The Payne's Gray in the Liquitex it's darker, and it doesn't appear to be as blue. Now, obviously, we could also swatch this, and maybe on another time I will do this. If we added some white to this, that would be very interesting to see, the different colors. But for the sake of today, I'm just wanting to compare. Like, now I have definitely, do Golden, and then of course this one doesn't write, and Liquitex. So if you had a pen that wrote, that would be helpful. So anyway, then I could just have these, and I could cut them down. Okay, that's our first one, Payne's Gray. Next up is the raw umber. So let's see what we got here. The Liquitex and some of these may not have that big of a difference in them. I definitely like that brown, and I do use that Liquitex raw umber a lot. So let's see if there's a reason. Okay, yeah, the Golden, look how much darker that is. Wow, I do like it. This one is more chocolatey, and this one is just a really dark brown. I do like both of them. They're extremely different, and I hadn't remembered that at all. So, okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, next up is burnt umber. So that should have kind of a little bit of red in it, I would think. Okay, here's the Liquitex. Wow, that is actually darker than I would have thought, but I do like it. And you can see, if I scrape through that a little bit more, you can see how I'm picking up, there is a little bit of red undertone in that. Okay, this is very similar, but this feels a little more transparent than the Liquitex, definitely. You can see the writing through there. They are similar, but they are slightly different. So that is burnt umber. Okay, next up is burnt sienna. Here we go. I like burnt sienna a lot when I'm doing, if I want to do skin tones, I use burnt sienna a lot. So that's if I'm trying to do a natural, kind of looking, semi-looking skin tone. A lot of times I like it to not look, natural. Well, I, use a color that's off a little bit. Okay, that's the Liquitex. That's really red. Okay, let's see what the golden looks like. That's seems more like a brick red, and it feels a little more, they're very similar though. We're gonna move on to raw sienna. Okay, raw sienna, here we go. I do love raw sienna. Well, I love most of these neutrals that we're testing out. Well, I do like them all, actually. I don't know why I said I like some of them. I like all of them. It's like, that's why I'm testing them, because I want to decide, which brand do I like the best? Okay, okay, I do like a good raw sienna. That is nice. Okay, I'm getting a little too much. Okay, this one I can tell is way lighter. These guys are really different. Oh my gosh. Doesn't even look like the same color. So golden is like a yellow, and raw sienna is like a, what? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like a raw sienna. Okay, next up is the neutral gray. So we'll see. I did this, kind of got this idea of swatching these so I could, when I did another video on my favorite acrylic paints. And so this kind of gave me the idea, because I think I had already compared these and was surprised at how different they were. So it kind of gave me the idea, like, I need to go through my neutrals and some of the paints that are similar and decide, like, oh, if I want to go in that direction or this direction, because it can make a big difference in what you're painting and the color. Okay, there's your Liquitex, which looks like your basic neutral gray. And then here is the golden. Okay, they do not look as different as they did when I swatched those before, but they are. The golden is slightly darker, I think, and I do think again that the gray, the Liquitex has a little bit of underlying green or something. So they are slightly different, but very, very similar. And like, again, added white to them, or you added, another color, some of the richness, you could see some of the other variations in it, you would come out a little bit more. So we might have to try that next time. Okay, we're on to Titan Buff, but here's the thing. Liquitex doesn't have Titan Buff. It has unbleached titanium. There's not the same thing. So I know that seems weird to swatch these two, but they are calling their off-white, something different. So I still want to see the difference side by side. I use them differently, but I want to see, I was like, I don't think I've ever put them just side by side, because I do sometimes just want out of the tube different off-white that I don't have to mix up. Because sometimes when I'm mixing up an off-white, oh my gosh, it only takes a tiny bit of the tint, color a white. And so then I end up with like some massive amount. So these are great for that. And sometimes when I want to change a color or mix a color, I don't want to add white because I don't want that starkness. I want to use one of these. But okay, so here is our unbleached titanium, which is lovely. And let's look at, let me get this cleaned off a little better. This, I can already tell that the Titan Buff is way lighter. And so there's the difference right there. It's just a completely different color. So this is warmer for sure. It obviously has like a peachy or some kind of undertone. And this is a little bit cooler, but they're great in their own way. I mean, right? It's like, who doesn't like a good neutral like this to contrast with whatever, darker color you have? It's just, they're beautiful colors. So, obviously their names are different for a reason, but colors I will, I obviously already use them, but I can see, it's interesting just seeing them side by side. Okay, so although I said I was mostly doing neutrals, I'm also going to do some colors. I'm going to do a yellow ochre and then a kind of a blue and a green. So But again, okay, golden, I have yellow oxide and yellow ochre. So they're going to be two different colors, but they're going to be, I want to see the similarity and the differences between them, because I couldn't find, and maybe I somehow missed it, but I couldn't find a yellow ochre in the Liquitex, and I could not find a yellow oxide in the golden. And maybe I just don't have those. I don't know. But yeah. So anyway, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what they look like, because they're very similar. And I do use both of these colors a lot. I wouldn't think of myself as a yellow person, but I think of myself as like a green person, but I use a lot of yellow. And I think obviously yellow and blue, make green. And so maybe that's why I'm really drawn to it when I'm painting. So, okay, here's the yellow oxide, which, obviously I love. Look at how beautiful that is. And now let's look at the yellow ochre. Okay, and now, to me, this looks very similar to a raw sienna, doesn't it? This does look like a yellow oxide. This looks like a raw sienna to me. So, and I might compare those. Let me grab the raw sienna. Okay. So this was raw sienna Liquitex. This was raw sienna. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, I can see it's different than the yellow ochre, but yeah, anyway, it's interesting because the colors that the brands, how they mix them is just so different. So, okay, let's move on to Cobalt turquoise. All right. So we're going really bold here with a color, not a neutral. But since we were on a roll, I figured why not? And I do use the Cobalt turquoise a lot. I don't use it as a dominant color, but I do use it. And so I did want to see what the difference between the two. Okay, so there's your Liquitex. It's very pretty. Okay, and let's see how the golden works. Okay, these two guys look very similar. This is the most similar of any of them that we've swatched. I will say I think the golden might be slightly darker. So we have one more to go, which is the chromium green oxide. Okay. And this is another color I love. So obviously I love greens, and so it's fun to use these, not always mix them up, although I don't know, you can mix up some really cool colors that are even better than these. So, okay, so let's see what the Liquitex looks like. Okay, seems a little brighter than I remembered, but maybe that's because I tone it down, probably. But you'd think a chromium oxide green would be a duller green, right? But I guess not. These both look very similar too. So maybe once you get, although now that I look a little bit closer, the Liquitex maybe is slightly greener. I don't know if that makes any sense, or maybe a little bit darker than the golden. Hard to say. They're really close. It's really close. Okay, so there you have it. It is interesting, like I said, just to pull up, just to side by side. Now I know, like the chromium oxide green and the cobalt turquoise, they are very similar. So maybe once you start getting into actual colors, that Liquitex and golden kind of come together. Whereas the neutrals, they seemed very different, most of them anyway. So it's kind of fun to do this, just to test it out and see what you have. And for me, it was a natural, I really wanted to see what the differences were, because sometimes I grab a bottle and I guess I'm not even thinking about it. You can get some very different colors and tones depending on which brand you're using. So I would recommend swatching it out, maybe not this big, just doing some small swatches if you have two colors in different brands, and just seeing what the results are, so that when you pull that color what you are getting. So anyway, go have fun, go swatch your colors and see what happens.